The discovery. When the Ministry discovered the island in 1718, they found a fortress and hundreds of Dementors. No prisoners, no bodies, just evil that had soaked into the stone. The island sits in the North Sea, remote, surrounded by freezing water and constant fog. Ministry officials sailing past reported something that shouldn't be there. A triangular fortress rising from bare rock, dark stone, no lights, no movement, just the structure and a feeling of absolute dread radiating from it. They approached carefully, sent scouts, found the building abandoned, empty cells, torture chambers, equipment left behind, and Dementors everywhere. Dozens of them gliding through corridors, clustering in rooms, feeding on the residual suffering embedded in the walls. The creatures had infested the place like rotten wood. No one lived there. No one had lived there for years, possibly decades. The fortress appeared functional but deserted, like whoever built it simply stopped coming and let it decay. The Dementors stayed because the location itself fed them, the pain, the fear, the despair that had been carved into the stone by whoever created this place. The Ministry investigated, found records, fragments of magical signatures, evidence of concealment charms that had recently failed, and they realized something disturbing. This fortress had been hidden for centuries, operating in secret, doing something so dark it attracted Dementors even after its creator died. This became Azkaban, the prison that held Sirius Black for 12 years, where Bellatrix Lestrange served time before escaping, where Hagrid was sent after the Chamber of Secrets opened. The Ministry took Ekrizdis' torture chamber and turned it into the wizarding world's most feared prison. They didn't build Azkaban, they inherited it, along with everything that came with it. Who Ekrizdis was? Ekrizdis was a 15th-century dark wizard, not a dark lord, not famous, just sick. He lived sometime in the 1400s. Exactly when, no one knows. He left no legacy, built no following, never tried to conquer anything or anyone. He wasn't interested in power or immortality or reshaping wizard society. He wanted one thing, to hurt people, specifically Muggles. Ekrizdis built the fortress on that North Sea island for a single purpose, torture. He used powerful concealment charms to hide the entire location from both Muggles and wizards, made it invisible, unplottable, impossible to find unless you already knew exactly where it was. Then he lured Muggles to the island, sailors who got lost in fog, fishermen whose boats drifted too close, anyone unlucky enough to pass near his hidden fortress. Once they arrived, they never left. He kept them in the cells, experimented on them, tortured them for however long they survived, then started again with the next victim. He did this for years, decades possibly, creating suffering for no reason beyond wanting to create suffering. This makes him different from other dark wizards in Harry Potter's world. Voldemort wanted power, control, immortality. Grindelwald wanted to reshape society and end the statute of secrecy. Even Gellert had goals beyond just causing pain. Ekrizdis had nothing, no ambition, no philosophy, no endgame, just cruelty for its own sake. The Ministry found writings, fragments of his work, evidence of what happened in those cells. They classified most of it, kept the details restricted. What they did reveal was enough. Ekrizdis was a sadist who built a fortress specifically designed to facilitate torture. And when he died, that purpose didn't die with him. The concealment charms failed, the island appeared, but the evil remained. The island fortress. The fortress wasn't a home. It was a trap designed to pull in victims. The structure reflects its purpose completely. Triangular, built from dark stone that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Narrow windows barely wide enough to see through. Thick walls designed to contain screaming. The architecture itself communicates what happened here. The interior layout consists almost entirely of cells and torture chambers, dozens of them, different sizes, different configurations, some large enough to stand in, others forcing prisoners to crouch. Ekrizdis designed variety into the suffering. The equipment remained when the Ministry found the place. Tools, restraints, magical and non-magical devices meant for prolonged pain. No comfortable living quarters exist, no library or study worth mentioning, no kitchen beyond basic function. Ekrizdis didn't live there in any normal sense. He used it, like a workshop. The fortress served one purpose, and every room reflected that purpose. The concealment charms he placed on the location were extraordinarily powerful. Fidelius-level secrecy without requiring a secret keeper. The entire island simply didn't exist to anyone not already aware of it. Muggle ships could sail past and see nothing but empty water. Wizards using detection spells would find no magical signature. The fortress was removed from reality while Ekrizdis maintained the magic. This design is why Azkaban works as a prison, why escape requires either death or extraordinary capability. Sirius Black managed it by transforming into a dog, thin enough to slip through bars meant for humans. then swimming to mainland. That took 12 years of planning and an animagus form most wizards don't possess. The building traps people by design. Ekrizdis built the perfect cage. The Ministry recognized that immediately. The torture chamber. Ekrizdis lured Muggles to the island. Sailors, fishermen, anyone who got too close. None of them left. He used magic to draw them in. Probably illusions, fake distress signals, lights that looked like safe harbor in the fog. Ships lost in storms would see the island and think they found rescue. By the time they realized the fortress was abandoned and wrong, Ekrizdis had them. He dragged them inside, locked them in cells, and begin. The Ministry found the equipment when they investigated. Tools, devices, magical and non-magical methods mixed together. Ekrizdis wasn't researching anything, wasn't testing theories about pain tolerance or magical resistance. He was just inflicting suffering because he enjoyed it. The torture had no point, no information he needed, no goal he was working toward, just cruelty. This went on for decades, ship after ship, victim after victim. The cells filled and emptied and filled again. Ekrizdis kept detailed records, documented what he did, how long people lasted, what methods produced what results. Not for science, not for dark magic advancement, for his own entertainment. The screaming soaked into the stone, the fear, the despair, the pain of people dying slowly in those cells created a magical residue that never faded. Dark magic can corrupt locations. Voldemort's Horcruxes corrupted the objects they inhabited, turned Slytherin's locket evil, made the diary capable of possessing people. Ekrizdis did the same thing to the entire island. His actions poisoned it. When he died, the torture stopped, but the echo remained. The Dementors that arrived later simply continued what Ekrizdis started. They fed on prisoners, the same way Ekrizdis fed on Muggles. The method changed, the suffering didn't. Azkaban's prisoners experienced the same despair those original victims felt, the same hopelessness, the same certainty that no one is coming to help. Ekrizdis built the template. The Ministry just filled it with different people. The lingering evil. When Ekrizdis died, his concealment charms faded. But the evil didn't. Dark magic leaves marks, not visible ones, magical residue, emotional imprints, suffering carved into physical space. When a location witnesses enough pain, enough fear, enough death, it absorbs that darkness, becomes corrupted, stays corrupted even after the source is gone. The Horcruxes proved this. Slytherin's locket made Ron paranoid and angry just from wearing it. The diary possessed Ginny, turned her into a weapon. The objects themselves became evil, not because they were originally dark, because Voldemort poured murder and soul-splitting into them. That darkness stuck. Ekrizdis did the same thing to the island. Years of torture, decades of Muggles dying in cells, their fear, their pain, their final moments of despair. All of that soaked into the fortress, into the stone, into the air itself. The building became a repository for suffering. Dementors feed on happiness, drain positive emotion and leave depression behind. But they're also attracted to places where happiness has already been destroyed, where despair is the default state. Azkaban called to them. The residual anguish from Ekrizdis' victims acted like a beacon. They came, found a fortress saturated with exactly what they feed on, and stayed. Even without fresh victims, the location sustained them. The walls remembered the screaming, the cells remembered the dying. That was enough. Dementors clustered in the fortress because the building itself provided what they needed, an endless supply of remembered suffering. This is why Azkaban breaks people faster than normal imprisonment would. Sirius went partially insane after 12 years. Barty Crouch Jr. nearly died after months. Bellatrix came out more unstable than when she went in. They weren't just locked up, they were locked in a place that actively feeds on hope and replaces it with Ekrizdis' leftover torture. The wizard died centuries ago. His victims are long gone, but what he did is still happening. How the Ministry found it. In 1718, the island suddenly appeared. The Ministry had a problem, a fortress full of Dementors, and a decision to make. Ekrizdis had been dead for years, maybe decades. His concealment charms required active maintenance, magic feeding them constantly. When he died, that maintenance stopped. The spells began breaking down, slowly, layer by layer, until they failed completely, and the island snapped back into visible reality. Muggle sailors reported it first, a fortress in the North Sea that wasn't on any maps. Ships started avoiding the area because the fog and the feeling of dread made navigation dangerous. The Ministry investigated, sent officials to examine what they'd found. They discovered the cells, the equipment, the records Ekrizdis left behind. They pieced together what happened on the island. A dark wizard had used this place to torture Muggles for decades, then died and left his workshop behind. Along with the Dementors his actions attracted. The Ministry had options: destroy the fortress, banish the Dementors, purge the location and sink the island back into the sea, make it disappear permanently. They didn't do that. They saw an opportunity. Wizarding prisons existed, but none of them were particularly secure. Prisoners escaped, guards could be bribed or imperious, facilities required constant staffing and maintenance. Azkaban solved those problems. The location was naturally isolated. The Dementors provided free security that couldn't be bribed or controlled, and the fortress was already built, ready to use, so they used it. Converted Ekrizdis' torture chamber into the wizarding world's maximum security prison, put the worst criminals in the cells where Muggles had died, let the Dementors that fed on residual suffering feed on new suffering instead. Cornelius Fudge made the same calculation centuries later. Keep the Dementors as guards, use their presence as deterrent, ignore what they do to prisoners. Ekrizdis built the system, the Ministry just maintained it. Azkaban's dark legacy. Every other wizarding prison uses guards. Azkaban uses trauma built into the walls. The fortress doesn't just hold prisoners, it destroys them. The Dementors drain hope, remove the ability to feel happiness, leave inmates with nothing but their worst memories on repeat. But even without the Dementors, the building itself would break people. The cells remember Ekrizdis' victims, that suffering is permanent, embedded in the structure. Sirius Black survived 12 years because his animagus form protected him partially. Dogs experience emotion differently, simpler. The Dementors couldn't feed on him as effectively when he transformed. Even then he came out damaged, paranoid, unstable, capable of violence he wouldn't have considered before imprisonment. Barty Crouch Jr. nearly died after months. His mother traded places with him using Polyjuice Potion, died in Azkaban herself to save him. That's how fast the prison kills. Stan Shunpike was imprisoned there during the Second Wizarding War for supposedly helping Death Eaters. He came out barely functional. The Ministry knows this. They've known since 1718 what Azkaban does to people. They use it anyway, because it works, because the threat of Azkaban keeps criminals terrified, because shutting it down means building something new and dealing with the Dementors that won't leave willingly. Kingsley Shacklebolt eventually removed the Dementors after Voldemort's defeat, replaced them with Aura Guards, but the fortress remains, the cells where Muggles died, the walls saturated with centuries of despair. That doesn't go away just because the Dementors left. Ekrizdis created something that outlived him by hundreds of years, a place where suffering is the foundation, where torture is architecture. The Ministry inherited his cruelty and called it justice. They put their criminals in his torture chamber and pretended it was punishment instead of continuing exactly what he started.